Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alan Joines, Mayor of Winston-Salem, and it's my honor to welcome you here as we unveil another of our historic markers here in Winston-Salem. It's an important program that we do throughout the community as we recognize either buildings, facilities, or events such as we're doing today that really chronicle the history and the fabric and the mosaic of our community. Certainly this particular event that we're highlighting today is not one of the more things we can be totally proud of as a community and the reason it had to happen, but we know that it was part of the growth of our community and the growth of this company that it was dealing with. So we here today to memorialize those folks who took actions in their hands to correct some things that they saw problems with and to move our city in a very positive way. We're enjoying the benefits of their work here many years later. It's my honor to be here today, and I'm going to right now recognize our Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Vivian Burke, for comments.
Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here, but as I say, when we come to occasions like this, it's a bittersweet time. I was telling some people the other day that when I come down and I pass 3rd and Patterson, between church, between 3rd and 4th and 4th and 5th, it's a sad time. Maybe it's a good time today, but as I reflect back about the sad time, me not being from here, coming here to start to work, and I'm sure former Councilmember Little and former Senator Palmer can tell you more about the history of what they saw growing up from children. And when I saw all of the minority people in a cluster, and then what really shocked me was to see when the temperature was nearly 100 degrees, they had on coats and sweaters. Yeah. And I said, what's wrong with them? And someone said, they work in a condition that's so terrible that they perspire, they have no air conditioning, and their bodies are just drenched with sweat. And if they did not put on a coat or a sweater, they would catch pneumonia. And quite a few of the citizens here did leave with TB, you all know that, because their bodies had been exposed. So I want to tell you, it is good when some people say, let us make a change, let us help to make an area better than it has been. So I'm pleased to stand here and say history can change and people's minds can change, and we must work hard with each other. And always give the city manager a charge. It is your responsibility to take care of all of the 230-some thousand people in this city, and to be fair with them all. And I'm very pleased that we do have some sensitive elected officials who understand all areas must be treated with fairness. May God bless us on this windy day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Burke, and I think she said it best that if we don't learn from our history, then we are tended to repeat our mistakes there. So we are right in the midst of the East Ward of the City of Winston-Salem, and it's my honor to present to you the council member from the East Ward, Councilmember Derwin Montgomery.
When you're up against a trouble, meet it squarely face to face, lift your chin and set your shoulders, plant your feet and take a brace. When it's vain to try to dodge it, do the best that you can do. You may fail, but you may conquer, see it through. Today we come to celebrate a group of individuals who came together and saw something through, saw something that they believed was important to themselves, important to their community, important to their very right of humanity. And that was to ensure that they had working conditions and qualities in which they worked in to ensure that they had the best opportunities, not just for themselves, but for those who would come behind them. I can say that I stand here today in direct correlation to what took place at that time. And the reason that I say that is when you think about what took place in this union, Local 22 coming together and them striking and them organizing community individuals and getting them engaged to a point to bring and raise the consciousness of a community, that they would begin to care about something like this. It did not end with them only changing the conditions within their factories, but it meant that they were able to begin to elect people who looked like them and represent them. And what happened from that was a direct correlation from Local 22 striking and organizing, was that they were able to elect the first African-American alderman to the Winston-Salem City Councilman, and that was K.R. Williams, who was elected to the Winston-Salem City Council. And I stand today in that shadow as an individual who represents this ward, in a shadow in which we have been able to come so far. But even to this day, the same type of battles that were fought at that time, unfortunately, in many places are still being fought. And it still calls our attention to ensure that we think about the quality and the work quality of those who work not just in our community, but for the products in which we consume each and every day. So as we celebrate this today, we are also charged to continue to look towards the future and to ensure that working condition and the humanity of individuals is respected to a place in which we continue to move our community forward. So this is an exciting time to celebrate our past, to look where we are, but also to charge forward into the future. So again, thank you all for what you do.
Thank you, Councilmember. We do have two other council members with us today, Councilmember Jeff McIntosh from the Northwest Ward and Councilmember Dan Bessie from the Southwest Ward. I'd invite you gentlemen if you'd like to make a comment.
There's a lawyer in
He got to say a word there.
Never put a mic in front of a lawyer. I just want to thank the Historic Resources Commission and staff for putting this together. You know, in Winston-Salem, we are a community that celebrates our history and our heritage. From the colonial era, the old Salems, the Bethabras, seems like we've been celebrating that forever. In recent years, we started remembering more of our industrial history, even in cases like this, turning it to our economic advantage by redeveloping older buildings into new uses and at the same time remembering the history. But it's important for us to remember that history is more than buildings. History is people. Now, I'm not the poet, my colleague is, but I want to share in putting this into context. You know, it's not just the bright spots or the sanitized version of history that we need to remember. We need to remember the struggles. We need to remember when people stood up for themselves and their colleagues and they put their lives and their jobs on the line, sometimes lost it. On the program today is a speaker who remembers his mother's part in that struggle. We need to remember that because it is not unconnected to the troubles that we experience today. As my colleague said, we have situations around the state, around the country, here in our community where working conditions, where wages need to be improved. We need to remember the struggles that our forebears went through. We need to turn those lessons to what we are trying to do today. Thank you.
Well said, Councilmember Bessie. Thank you very much. Today we are celebrating and commemorating this event that occurred over a couple of 3-4 years in our city's history. And I want to certainly personally thank the Historic Resources Commission for their hard work throughout our community and highlighting the history of our community. We'll now turn the program over to Michael Ryden, who is the chairman of the Historic Resources Commission. And Michael, if you would carry the program forward from this point on.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Michael Ryden. I am the chairman of the Forsyth County Historic Resources Commission. And on behalf of the commission, I'd like to welcome everyone here today for this historic monument unveiling. The R.J.R. labor strikes commemorated by this marker represent an extremely important part of our community's history. The events are as relevant today as they were in 1943, when several hundred, primarily African-American women, began a strike that was followed by many others from the Reynolds factories. These strikes brought about positive change in the industry. By the late 40s and the early 1950s, with the help of the CIO-affiliated Local 22, Reynolds provided for wage increases, job security, vacations, and grievance procedure for their employees. Our historic markers help the community to remember the people who came before us and paved the way for a better quality of life. These markers help recognize a time in history that future generations can learn from. The Historical Marker program started over 10 years ago, and to date we have placed close to 40 markers throughout our community. Now I'd like to introduce former Senator Arlene W. Parman, who has deep connections to the area and our community.
Good afternoon. It is truly a wonderful afternoon for us to be here, and I can't help but to reflect. As we have this unveiling of this marker today, I think about Velma Hopkins, who was one of the leaders for Local 22, along with Miranda Smith, and so many others that we can't name. Someone said that they talked to someone who had honor something that was a part of that strike. But I was directly impacted by Velma Hopkins, who was one of the women, strong women, that dared to stand up, that had worked in those conditions that many of us read about. And when it became unbearable, and it had been going on so long, she worked with people. And one of the things that she taught me, well, you don't always have to be out front to get things done. And that was one of her great strengths, of organizing people and getting the job done. And I have with me this afternoon my brother, who worked in the Bailey power plant. And after all of this, we talk about what Local 22 did. He told me he worked there, started in August 8th, 1964, is that correct? August the 5th, 1964, making $1.34 an hour. In 1964, and that was many years after Local 22. And Ms. Hopkins talked about how even then, black women made less than black men. Black women made 50 cents an hour, Dr. Little, and black men made 60 cents an hour. And I'm not going to get emotional, but I lived right here in this neighborhood. In fact, my brother told me he parked in front of our old home place, which would be the fourth house on the left between Linden and Maple. And I remember all the businesses that were here between 5th and 4th and Linden. It was an ice plant right there. And some lady said, an ice plant, was it for the factory? I said, no, we had ice boxes. There were no refrigerators. So this is where we got ice to put in our ice boxes to keep our food cold. So today, to see this transformation that stood so empty for so long, we called it a cement pond, and all the families that had put blood, sweat, and tears in this community, I know they would be happy to see it come alive, to see retail going into here, residential. And I was saying I thought I wouldn't be able to come back here to live, but Councilman Montgomery said I might, so I'm gonna check into it. Yeah. So this is such a wonderful day, and it's a day of reflection, and to see this come full circle back to where it's going to be a viable and livable community again. And Ms. Hopkins Councilman Member Burke had a street named after Miss Velma Hoover Hopkins, and it's on 14th and 12th and Liberty Street. And so we thank you for that, but she had a lot to do with why we're standing here today, along with so many other people that went unnamed and unrecognized. So thank you for doing this to for the resources and the developers and the business that's come back in here to invest in my neighborhood. And I am so happy about what's going on here today. Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Larry Little with the North Ward Alderman.
As former North Ward Alderman, they call him City Councilman now. My mother, Oshibel Little, worked for Reynolds. She was a part of those who went out on strike. For her organizing efforts, she was terminated by Reynolds. But she taught us a lot about the working conditions. Being a professor, I want to recommend you a book to understand this whole labor movement. It is called Civil Rights Unionism by Professor Robert Korstadt, Duke University. Civil Rights Unionism. It lays out in detail the efforts of these people to organize. People who I call griots, those of the African tradition who remember so much history in their heads. Mr. George Boyd told me about how when they came to work, they often would take their shirts off and keep their pants on and their shoes on because within 5 minutes they would be engulfed in sweat. The conditions were so bad that we had German prisoners of war in Winston-Salem. And they worked in the factories, but they were not allowed to work in the factories in the parts where the black people had to work because they were considered to be inhumane conditions. And Velma Hopkins saw a man go to a nursing station and complain he was dizzy. They said he was gold bricking and told him to turn around and go back to work. This man took one step and fell dead in the plant of Reynolds. And Velma Hopkins and Miranda Smith and others, and Chick Black, they began to organize these people to get some decent conditions. Local 22 built the black middle class of Winston-Salem. We stand on the shoulders of that union movement. Not only did they get increased wages, Reynolds gave the workers profit sharing. And I'm going to show you how significant it was. When I got out of law school, I had an old man to come to me who worked in Reynolds for years and had in a brown paper bag some stocks. And he said, I started buying this stock, Larry, 15, 25, 30 years ago. I know it's worth something, I just don't know how much it's worth. But I participated in profit sharing with Reynolds. I had someone who knew more than I did about the stock. That man's stock was valued at over $500,000. That was indeed profit sharing. That was the power of the union movement. And today, I think we need a similar union movement because profits are going up, but wages of the average working person are flatlined, and we cannot deal with that. So I'm honored to be here in memory of my mother, who would be 103 years of age today. She lived to be 97, but she embedded in me the idea to fight, stand up for what you believe in, and don't be afraid to take some heat. And she said, if you can't take the heat, get out the kitchen. So I'm thankful that the people who have transformed this building are conscious enough to say, we want to recognize the people who went before, who struggled, who didn't have it as well, but who did something to make this city a much better place to live. Thank you kindly.
And next I'd like to introduce Crystal Beard. She's the Assistant Manager of Plant 64 Apartment Homes.
Wow. Thank you. On behalf of Plant 64, we are absolutely honored to be able to host such an amazing time, to be able to remember the women that stood for the community, and to be able to work in this place and open the doors to the community and be able to house us now. It is amazing, and we are honored to be a part of this. And on behalf of C.A. Harrison Companies and Penrose, who are our developers, we're excited that Plant 64 is here and it's open, and we would like to open the doors tonight to you all to give you some tours and to show you, to be able to take you and walk you down the halls of something that was tragic at one point that has turned into something so positive for the community. So again, we're honored. We thank you to the chairman, right, and to the Resource Commission for allowing us to be a part of this event tonight. Thank you.
And next I'd like to introduce Will Cox, a social activist. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a real honor to be here. I will never pass up an opportunity to talk about Local 22, the great struggle that took place here of national significance. We had Woody Guthrie come here during this struggle. We had Paul Robeson that came here quite a few times. The reason it was such a struggle is it was more than just what went on in the tobacco factory, and it was more than a pay raise. And I think it's the very struggle we're engaged in right now, and that's why it means so much to me. We worked on getting the state marker down the street a little ways, and I think it's a great thing that the city and the developer wants to have this marker, because any chance that we can remind folks of what they were able to do starting in 1943, it should be an inspiration to everybody. And those rights that they fought for in the workplace, they were so inspired by what, being treated as equals, or the chance of being treated on an equal basis, that they said, you can't contain this inside the walls of this factory. And they took it out into the community. And that civil rights unionism is really what kicked off our later civil rights struggle that sometimes we try to encapsulate just, from the 1950s and 60s. I think that's the larger story for me. I think we need to remember that the struggles, just because they happen now, they're significant, and we need to be engaged in those struggles, because that was a whole community that got involved. They weren't always on the same side, but I think you can guess which side I think you need to be on. That's the side of justice, but quite a few young people and older folks, some of the folks that were here, marched down this street just a few months ago as far as the Black and Brown Lives Matter. These struggles are still happening, and I just hope we can use this marker and this beautiful transformation here as a reminder. Thank you.
I'd like to thank our elected officials and guests today for their memorable stories. And I'd like to open this up to all of you. If there's anyone here who would like to share any stories about this event, please come forward and share those with us, if anyone is here who would like to do that. Okay. And what is your name?
My name is James White.
James. This is James White, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you, James.
Good evening, all. This is my old stomping ground. I'm just looking around, and it's amazing me. And I am so proud and appreciated to be here to stand in front of you and let you know how appreciated it is. My sister have said the development of where we live, we strived. It was hard, but we had a good time. We made the best of situations. I remember the good times, the bad times. And I worked at Bailey Power Plant for 25 years. And I've been in the back all my life because I'm a country boy. So I'm just proud to see everything and the people that's here to participate in. And my sister said, if you don't come, I got something for you. She know a group, I cannot speak, I get tangled up, but sometimes if I get started, I can say a whole lot. But I'm not going to say too much, but I'm just appreciated to be here to say this. And like they say, progress have been made. Progress is still to be made. And so is our hearts to progress and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Is there anyone else who would like to go up and share? Well, then I'd like to ask our officials and guests to step forward to the marker, and we'll start our unveiling.